Oh, Craig was the first one in.
I'll give it a few more seconds.
Sounds great.
And I'd like to welcome those of you who've already signed in. So thanks for joining Leona and myself for this really busy time of the year. But I think it's a really important thing to look after ourselves and our emotional well-being leading into this super busy time and a bittersweet time for many of us. So I'm Davidicus Wong, family doctor in Burnaby for 3 decades. And my partner in empowering patients is Leona. And before I forget, this is the time we have to remember all the people that we really appreciate year in, year out. And Leona, we really appreciate you, what you do for the community, all your volunteer work, and all the things you've done for the Burnaby division and leading as our interim executive director on short notice, and all the work you do for my other organization, the Canadian Society of Clinical Hypnosis. So we love all the things you do. We love you, and we really appreciate the really kind ways that you work with everyone, including the public, in our Empowering Patients program. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Wong. It's my pleasure. All the work I get to do is so fulfilling. I get to meet wonderful people. I get to, it's a gift for me. So thank you so much, and thank you for all you do in community as well. It's amazing. You won't never cease to amaze me.
Thanks, Leona. So Leona's going to share some important things that are going on in our community, particularly with the Burnaby Division of Family Practice and our primary care networks.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. Thank you for jumping on a less than a week before Christmas. So for those some of you links will be familiar, but I'm going to share our Empowering Patients program main page, which has a list of all of our upcoming talks. We've got talks scheduled every month till April, and so in there the link will have registration links, so you can register for any of those topics that are of interest to you. We'll be jumping back in January. And the other link I'm going to share is it's called Other Resources, but it's Empowering Patient Resources, including Dr. Wong's presentations and key points documents or information sheets, which are just high-level sheets that you can print or share, email to folks that you might find that would find that beneficial, that information. If you're looking for a family doctor, I'm going to share a link with all the information around the Healthy Community Partnership, the Health Connect registry. So there's a provincial-wide one-stop shop. You register for a family doctor provincially, but if you live in Burnaby, then your information will come to us and we will contact you as soon as your name comes up on the list. So I'll share that link. We've got our Burnaby Primary Care Networks, which is all the work we do with the Health Authority, the City of Burnaby, and all of our community partners. So there's a lot of activity that goes on in that world. So please check out that link. There's supports for seniors, for youth and teens. There's allied health supports that are available through your Burnaby family doctor. So by all means, check that out. And the last link I'll share is our monthly checkup newsletter. So my communications team gathers really important information about what's going on locally in health and wellness, but also a bit more broadly. So I will put the link for the December issue in the chat for you. And if you scroll to the bottom, and then you can register to receive them ongoing. So you can just subscribe and you'll receive the January issue. And at the very end of this session, I will, when I hit end, there will be an 8-question evaluation. So if you would mind taking 30 seconds to complete that for us, that's really great. It's information that Dr. Wong and we review it every time, and we definitely take your feedback to heart and try and incorporate it into our planning session. So I'm going to stop talking.
Thanks, Leona. Yeah, so the topic today is emotional well-being and resilience practices. So the emotional health skills I try to teach my patients, and that I've tried to teach my own kids, and that I use myself just to manage the human brain, these thoughts and feelings that can get in the way of our happiness, but can also be used to enhance our happiness in our relationships with one another. And this is a really important time, Christmas time, holiday time, where it's supposed to be really happy and celebrating. But I know it's a bittersweet season. So we'll talk about this and how we can all manage. So I'll share a few personal stories that can illustrate these different aspects of our emotions in the holiday season. And I'll actually give you a primer on how the human brain works. So things that I've learned over the years, but still a mystery to many physicians, counselors, and pretty well everyone in the public. But I think they're really essential, as essential as other health practices, the key skills to maintain your emotional wellness throughout a lifetime. And this slide is just a reminder that we see a big increase in respiratory infections, obviously in the fall and into the winter, but always in the new year, after all the holiday celebrations, we see a big boost in COVID numbers and hospitalizations and other respiratory infections like the walking pneumonia, RSV infections, and the flu and regular colds and sinus infections too. But I finally figured out what the problem was. So the culprit is in the middle of that photo, Santa Claus. So he doesn't fall under the jurisdiction of any health authorities or any provinces or countries in terms of health practices. But I suspect that Santa, being isolated in the North Pole, may not be wearing a mask and washing his hands while he goes house to house and handles all these things that are passed on to little kids and grown-ups throughout the whole world. So in his nightly visits. So I think that's the problem. So maybe you can leave a hand sanitizer for Santa, along with the cookies and the milk and the carrots for the reindeer, so that Santa is very careful. And if any of you are involved in lots of parties and things, yeah, so you can model that for Santa as well. Hand washing before you touch things that other people are going to touch. And if you're feeling sick, then you probably shouldn't go out, but I don't think Santa gets that option. So just a friendly reminder, let Santa know and the people that you're around, just to be careful so we don't have some unexpected gifts after the holiday season. And I'll have time at the end for any questions on this topic or anything else that's really pressing that might be of a question that other people might share about general health and staying healthy throughout the holiday season and beyond. Yeah, we have all these Christmas pictures with Santa Claus. There was one time when my daughter was 7 years old. She was about 7 years old, and she started doubting Santa Claus, that he really existed. And it happened because she hadn't decided what she wanted for Christmas. And so Santa, of course, asked when she had her picture taken, what do you want for Christmas? And she said, I haven't decided yet. And Santa says, well, when you decide, you just tell your mom and dad. And that planted this seed of doubt. And she said, is Santa real? Or is Santa actually mom and dad? Like, why would I tell mom and dad? Do they have a, and I just thought that was a crazy thing for Santa to say. Is he kind of downloading his work onto the parents? No, I have to go back to the mall once I know what she wants to tell Santa Claus what Sarah wants for Christmas. But I didn't bother going there to complain or to sue Santa because every time I went to the mall, I couldn't tell if it was the same Santa that talked to my daughter because frankly, they all looked the same to me for some reason. Um, but then I thought about it that I talked to Sarah and thought about my own beliefs in Santa Claus, and I believed in Santa in a different way when I was her age. I thought of him as like a paternal type figure that lives far away up north at the North Pole, that he's watching us all the time and that he's making sure that we're good and not doing bad things. And then he keeps a list and then rewards us for being good. And in the old days, punished kids for being poor and gave them coal, which is carcinogenic and of course leads to climate warming and all the disasters that we have in our environment today. But I found that that view of Santa was a little bit too rigid. And like all our stories about how the world works and what's real and who we are in a relationship to others depends on the stories we tell ourselves. And as we grow older and a little bit wiser and get more experience, we need to expand our stories, like broaden them and understand things in a different way. So I still believe in Santa Claus, but not in the old way. I don't think of him as a person living far off and looking down on us from the North Pole. I think of his spirit in each of us when we're giving generously and not judging, and just being kind and generous and giving um, each of the people in our lives what they need so that they feel loved and accepted just as they are. So I still believe in Santa, but not the same way that Sarah used to believe in Santa. So this is the bittersweet season. So there's supposed to be lots of celebration. We're planning lots of parties. I'm going to have 40 or 50 people at my house on Christmas Eve, and that's mainly family, extended family. And there's lots of people in the malls, big lineups, traffic jams, people trying to find those perfect gifts. So it's a time of crazy consumption and lots of Christmas music. But we have to remember that for a lot of us, it's a bittersweet season. And every Christmas carol reminds us of Christmas Day. So this time, the holiday time, because we have these traditions of meeting together, getting together with loved ones, um, it is a sad time as well, because though some things stay the same, like the Christmas carols and our plans for dinners and gatherings, things change every year and we lose loved ones and our relationships change as well. And there are a lot of people out there that can't afford to buy Christmas presents. They're just struggling to have food on the table. There are many in this cold time of the year and this wet time of the year that don't have a home to stay in. So please remember those people that have less than we have, and those that are missing their loved ones from the past and maybe even in the past year, and have compassion for them as well. There's one special Christmas that we had. It was Christmas 2003. So it was the first Christmas without my mom. She had passed away just after Easter that year, really suddenly. So it was a big shock to us. And we couldn't bear having a Christmas dinner and celebrations at home without my mom, because she was really she was the Santa Claus of our family. Like most families, it's usually the mom that does all those works, all the work and preparations to make things perfect for the rest of the family, especially for little kids like us when we were growing up. And then as my kids were growing up, she was a very, very special person, a very generous person, but we missed her so much. So we planned a surprise for the kids just to lighten up the season and get in touch with that joy again with family. So we planned a special trip for them. And Christmas Eve, we packed up all their stuff in their little suitcases for a little trip. And then we woke them up on Christmas morning and said, we're going on a mystery trip. And all their bags were in the minivan. And then we drove them to the airport. And at the airport, they saw Grandpa, my dad, and Auntie Lisa and Uncle Barry. They still didn't know where we were going, so they're trying to guess where this mystery trip would be. And each of them picked up on different clues. But the real highlight was when we landed, we were driving to the town, and then my son, Adam, who's on the left side of the picture with the big dimples, he suddenly saw the sign to Disney, the Magic Kingdom. And as we are passing it, his face lit up and we saw his dimples. And he was so happy because he said, we're going to Disneyland. So that was the surprise. And then the next morning, we met my brother's kids at the Denny's, and then we had our first day in Disneyland. So it was a really super duper memorable time at what normally would be a really, really sad time for us. So that was a really special memory, because my mom, who had passed away earlier that year, really was like the model of unconditional love and caring and giving and generosity. She was very active in our church at Cliff Avenue. She was the Sunshine Lady. So she'd be the one that gets special gifts and presents for people on their birthdays or visiting people in the hospital. And then her compassion just expanded beyond our own family to the church and the church community and to her friends. And she just had a very special way. And her loss was really huge to me. But I only came to terms with it when I realized that what I had left of my mom was not just the memories, but all the love that she gave to us. loving us just as we were, seeing the best in us, even when we weren't behaving our best, and bringing out that best because she really believed in us. So all that love she gave to me, um, I knew that was my part of who I was, and that I kept that part of her, and that my goals, her legacy was that legacy of love that we all have with the important people in our lives and our friends and all the people that have helped us. And like the water cycle, the water in our body is not here to stay, but the love in us is ours to give forward. So I give that love to each of my kids so that they can give that love forward, and to my wife, and she gives that forward to the kids that she's been teaching until she just retired from teaching just last June. And I know that love, my mom's love, is going to be continuing on as we give love forward and given forward from other people. So we're part of that cycle of love. And I really think the whole purpose of our time here is to learn to love people as they are and to share that love, to learn to be loved and to have compassion for ourselves and other people. So I think that's one of the big points of being around and what I learned from my mom. But my mom actually had a difficult early life as well. So when she was just 9 years old, her mom passed away. Her father had passed away earlier. So she and her siblings, all here, this is when they were much older, but the youngest was still in diapers, and the oldest aunties were my aunties, my mom's sisters, were still teenagers. And instead of them going into orphanages with no parents and no money, the oldest decided that they will look after all the kids. And they would go to work and not follow their individual plans for university or college, but they would take jobs so they can support the family so that each one of them would survive and thrive and get through school and get settled. And 83 years later, we still have celebrations with my cousins. Traditionally, it's been Boxing Day. But this year we're hosting at my old church, Cliff Avenue, where we used to have the Boxing Day parties. We're going to have a special party with all my cousins. Only my Auntie Mamie remains of all the siblings, but we'll be remembering this family that looked after each other and support each other unconditionally so that all of us could be here. So not only did they survive, but we're all here because of them. Again, that cycle of love that's endless. So today I'm going to talk about stress in our everyday lives, especially at Christmas time, and just talk about a practical approach for managing that stress. And I'll also give you kind of a primer of how our brains actually work, like where our thoughts come from and then the emotions. And then I'll talk about a superpower that all of you have, but some of you may not have realized. And, I only discovered in the past couple of decades. And we'll teach you 3 key mental health skills for self-care, including mindfulness, a form of meditation, but also a mindset of seeing the world. Cognitive therapy, which is not going to specific therapy, but looking at our thoughts and being able to assess our thoughts to see if they're being helpful or if there are alternative thoughts or ways of seeing our situation that could be more fruitful and helpful for us and others. And also teach you a little bit about self-hypnosis, how we can define our goals and change our focus and institute positive change in our own brains and in our emotions. This is one of my favorite Christmas movies. It's a Wonderful Life. So I hope all of you get a chance to watch it this season. So I have a list of favorite Christmas movies, and this is the number one. I have one special Christmas memory when my son Ryan was 10 years old. He had a bad flu, so I stayed home with him while the rest of the family went for the big dinner at my in-laws. So, but we had a special time watching Christmas movies, even though we had McDonald's food for that Christmas dinner. And we watched this movie together. So those of you that haven't seen Jimmy Stewart's movie, It's a Wonderful Life, it's about the character that Jimmy Stewart plays, George Bailey, lives in a small town. And as a child, he has these dreams of traveling the world and going to all these exotic places that he always dreamed of. But his family owned the Bailey Building and Loan. So it was a company that helped support the poor people in their community so that they wouldn't have to live in the slum areas. So they help lend people money to help them build their homes. Every time something came up, George Bailey would kind of sacrifice his dream. So his father died when he was planning to go off to university. So he stayed around, looked after the building and loan to look after the people in the community. Over and over again, he made sacrifices to look after the people in his lives and the people in his community and never following his own dreams. And then there was disaster where um, his uncle had lost the money that was supposed to be deposited, and the regulators came and they were going to be charged with fraud. So he was super desperate, and he was so desperate that he was mean to his uncharacteristically mean to his family. He was very impatient. He shouted at his daughter's school teacher for letting him go out and get a cold. And we know that that's not how you get a cold from being in the cold. You get it from other people like Santa Claus or people that you're hanging around with. So he shouted at that teacher on the phone. And then later when he was in the bar, the wife of that teacher gave him a big punch because he made his wife cry. George ran out. He was about to jump off a bridge when he was um, stopped by a guardian angel, Clarence, the guardian angel trying to get his wings. And Clarence showed him what his life would be like if he wasn't around, if he never existed. And so he gets to kind of go back in time and see that if it wasn't for him, he wouldn't have saved his younger brother, who later on would save a lot of people in World War II, or I think it was World War I in this movie. Um, and he wouldn't go on to help all these people. The town was a big slum because the evil banker, because there wasn't any Bailey Building and Loan for him to have saved, had taken over the town, and all his friends and loved ones had very sad lives, and his kids didn't exist because he wasn't around either. So you got to have a glimpse of his impact on the lives of so many people. And then he got his wish to have his life back. And then he came back home, and it turned out all the people in town knew of his predicament, and they all donated money to prop up the bank, just to show how much he was appreciated in that life. But you can see some of the traps we fall into that can lead us to a deep depression, how we tell our stories. He thought for a moment when he was in distress that the world would be better off if he wasn't around. But he soon saw that wasn't the right way to see, and he saw the impact that he had in others that he didn't realize. So we could get that way when we're really upset or angry or depressed. It shapes how we see our loved ones and how we react to them. And when people don't know someone's backstory, they don't really understand them. They see them as difficult people or really mean people. But everyone has a story in how we view our life. Even really difficult people have a story of trauma or abuse that can help explain why they act the way they do. And we have to have compassion, not necessarily an excuse for people to pass on that abuse to others, but understanding that we all see the world in a different way. Even villains see the world, and criminals think that they're right in what they're doing. So we need that kind of compassion, and we need ourselves to be able to change our mindsets or see our situation from different points of view. So that it's a great movie, great story, but it does illustrate things that really happen in our own minds and how it can affect us. So usually at the beginning of talks with doctors, we usually talk about our conflicts of interest. So don't think I have any to express today for our talk. My intentions are for you to achieve your positive potential in life. And my biases are the same cognitive biases we all have. Our brains take shortcuts to making decisions. So this is kind of a list of 200 plus cognitive biases that we have, thinking errors that we fall into at different times, how our judgment can be skewed. because our thoughts are just kind of ideas of how the world works. And that's just based on what we're seeing. And what we can see is quite limited. So a primer on how our brains work. You could think of our brains as kind of thought factories. We receive information through all our senses, through sight, through sound, through smell and taste and feeling. But we know that our senses are limited. Well, we don't smell all the things that our pet dogs smell. We don't see all the things that an eagle would see. We only see a few things in a particular spectrum of light. And likewise, we only see a small fraction of reality. And so our brains are constantly trying to interpret and make sense of what's going on in our life. So particularly our left side of the brain has a judging, comparing mindset. And that from that arises a lot of our thinking errors and how we misinterpret things and get into thinking traps that can affect our relationships and our moods as well. So our brains are constantly producing thoughts, trying to interpret our environment, and it happens at a both conscious level that we're aware of and a subconscious level that we're not so aware of. So not all of those thoughts are true. They're kind of just little hypotheses or guesses of what's going on. But we also have cognitive biases, so that once we're kind of stuck in a certain way of thinking, we look for things that can confirm our point of view. So we only see limited information. So it's another mind filter. So that's called the um, confirmation bias, that we see things that support our theory of how things are. That the internet works that way. It looks at what we're looking at, sends us more of the things that can foster that opinion, and then we kind of get lost in certain ways of thinking that are quite polarized. So that's part of the reason that the internet has really worsened the cognitive biases that we have and kind of separated us a lot more than we used to be. Another important principle is that the thoughts we focus upon or ruminate upon and play over and over again really shape our emotions and shape our perspective. So we have thoughts that interpret what we're sensing, and those thoughts can actually limit what we actually sense in the future. And this is one of the biggest biases we have, the negativity bias. So the left side of the brain was kind of built so that we can survive as animals, so that we can pick up on danger and looking at what's wrong in our environment. So it had great survival value, but it causes a lot of our divisions and arguments and a lot of our anger and sadness and anxiety. So one psychologist said that our brains are Velcro for the negative, for bad experiences, bad interpretations, and Teflon for good experiences. So some psychologists say that we need to see 5 positive things just to balance out with one negative thing, or we need 5 positive thoughts to balance with one negative thought. This is really important in relationships because the longer we live with people, the more negative things we might notice about them, the more negative things we say. And our own kids, when they hear us give 1 criticism and 3 compliments, that negative criticism is the one that they're going to hear and remember. So think of that at home this Christmas season when you're close to family. So before you come up with one negative thing that you might be saying or criticism, you have to come up with at least 5 positives. It's so much work that you might decide to hold your tongue and not say something negative that really that doesn't need to be said. So as I said, our ancestors survived by tuning into that negativity, looking out for danger, what's wrong. And we need to see those 5 positive just to balance out the negative and be kind of neutral. And emotions are not our enemy. So they're not something that we want to drug away or drink away or medicate away. They've really helped the human race to survive, and they give us real signals. So if we didn't have desire, then we wouldn't reproduce. None of us would be here. And if we didn't have sadness, we wouldn't avoid the things that cause us pain. And if we didn't have anger, we wouldn't defend ourselves or our loved ones, and we wouldn't stand up to injustice. And if we didn't have a bit of anxiety, we'd never plan ahead, we wouldn't sound the alarm, and we wouldn't run away from dangerous animals or a flood or a storm. This is kind of a simplistic way of looking at the brain, but you can see down at the brainstem, the reptilian brain is just kind of survival mode, like satisfying your hunger and just following your instincts. And through evolution, we develop this emotional or feeling brain, or the limbic brain, or the early mammalian brain. So that's the seat of our emotions. And then we developed as primates the neocortex, the rational thinking, problem solving brain. But sometimes when our emotions are really powerful, it kind of hijacks that neocortex in our thinking. And that's why our emotions can really shape our thinking. Another way that our thoughts are not necessarily true or accurate. And when we're not focused on a particular task, and when we're not being mindful, our brain falls into what we call the default mode network. And it's kind of the daydreaming mode where we're kind of focusing on our life story. It kind of creates how we see things. It tries to integrates things. And we find that most people, when they're in default mode, the longer they're in it, the more depressed and sad and negative they become. So our brain produces stories based on our thoughts and our experiences and their interpretations of them. And it's really important to uncover those stories and to look at it from a different perspective. And sometimes we need other people and listening to their stories and their perspectives to help us expand how we see the world and one another. So that all seems negative, but it actually is positive because our brains have a remarkable ability to learn and adapt. So the human brain can change over time. So it's not just as children and adolescents that our brain is adapting and learning. We continue to adapt and learn throughout our whole lifetime at any age. And with deliberate practice, we can learn new ways of thinking and feeling and create new habits of thought, feeling, and being, and change and revise our life stories. Because our interpretation of ourselves or relationships to the world are really just theories of how the world works. And just like my daughter's belief in Santa Claus when she was little, and my own belief in Santa Claus when I was little was very concrete, and was appropriate for that stage of development. But as we mature, as we learn more, as we have more life experience, our conception of Santa Claus and the rest of the world kind of expands to be more meaningful. So we can throw away old models just like scientists do when there's new information. So we should always be seeing ourselves, seeing each other with a fresh perspective. And when we see things that just don't agree with a certain model of how the world works with our own stories, it's probably time to revise our theories like scientists do. And our brains can adapt because the nerve cells, the neurons in our brain and nervous system, they adapt. So neurons that fire together, wire together. That means that repeated ways of thinking or feeling can become hardwired over time. But we can learn new ways of doing things and thinking that I'll introduce today that could create new ways of thinking about your life and feeling in a different way. Another important principle of neuroscience is that what we focus on, we magnify. It's called attention density. So concentrated attention solidifies new habits of thought, feeling, and intention. So it takes some effort and intention, and that's where mindfulness or meditation, cognitive therapy, and clinical self-hypnosis can play a role of changing our own brains. So just to summarize, what we naturally focus on is the negative in our lives. Our emotions can take over our thoughts, and repetitive self-defeating thoughts can perpetuate negative emotions, narrow what we see, and then perpetuate those same beliefs, feelings in kind of a vicious cycle. But on the positive aspect, if we utilize the prefrontal cortex with mindfulness, cognitive therapy, and positive visualization, if we focus on positive perspectives and emotional states, we strengthen them. And we have new self-affirming positive practice, we become hardwired into daily practice. So this is really the superpower that every one of us has, but most of us don't discover. And it's called metacognition. It's our ability to recognize our own thoughts rather than getting caught up in a train of thoughts and identifying with them. Recognizing our own beliefs and judging whether or not they're adaptive or maladaptive. Are they helping us in our relationships, or are they limiting us in our relationships? And being able to modulate our emotions and really to transform them. So it's the awareness and it's the ability to transform them through this power of neuroplasticity. Another aspect that most people aren't aware of, you all know you have a left cerebral hemisphere, a left brain, and a right cerebral hemisphere, and they work in concert together. So they both have different functions. But the Western world is really focused on the left brain. And it's the habits of thought, belief, and action of that left brain that we need to transform with the functions of the right brain. So I'll elaborate a little bit about the different roles of the two sides of the brain. But I'll give some tips on managing stress and thinking about stress. So burnout, a lot of physicians and healthcare providers feel this in the hospital, in the clinics, in their work, but many people in the challenge of their work, their family lives, and um, just their situation. If the challenge of our work is really low and our abilities and the resources we have far exceed those challenges, we'd be really bored. It'd be a really boring job. And we'd be feeling underachieving and unfulfilled. And when the challenges and the resources we have and our abilities perfectly match, we're kind of in this nice state of flow where we're kind of humming along and feeling well. But much of the time, with downsizing or heavy workloads or lots of patient problems and not enough time and not enough support from the community, all of us can get overwhelmed, and this creates a lot of stress and anxiety. So when the challenge of the situation exceeds what we can manage, we start feeling kind of helpless and anxious. And if this goes on a long time and gets worse, we start feeling burnt out and being ineffective, and it can lead to a sense of hopelessness or depression. So it's important to kind of recognize our situation now and make sure there's that good match and to know when to reach out for help. A really key aspect in managing stress at any time in our life is knowing, having a sense of control in our lives. We call it the locus of control. So if in spite of the demands of your work, um, there might be some aspects of the situation that you can control. So we have to accept the things that we can't change, but we have to accept our responsibility for changing the things that we can in a positive way. And you might recall the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So that's kind of psychological as well as philosophical wisdom. And it's important to know that stress is not always the enemy. Hans Selye kind of talked about distress versus eustress. We need some stress in our lives just to be motivated to do things and to improve and to grow. So positive stress is eustress, that motivation and rising to the occasion. And distress is quite different. And it sometimes is partly the amount of stress and the nature of the stress, but it can also be how we think about it. So Kelly McGonigal, if you Google TED Talks Kelly McGonigal or the upside of stress, you'll see a really different take on stress. Everyone knows that stress is bad and that stress can kill us. It can raise our blood pressure, our stress hormones, and that's not good for us. But Kelly McGonigal kind of pointed out there's a different response to stress, that it can be positive if it's a challenge response, that we can, if we rise to the challenge, just like working out, trying to improve our running times, trying to improve our fitness, we can increase our self-confidence and it can motivate us to act and help us to learn from experience. So stress can be a positive thing if it's the right dose and in the right situation, the right support. And another response to stress is the tend and befriend response. And this makes us want to connect with other people, to help other people, and it can motivate us to care for other people. This releases neurotransmitters in our brains that raise oxytocin, and that connects us with other people, and that improves our health. And the challenge response, rising to the occasion, feeling appropriately challenged, raises dopamine and in a very positive way, and that's actually good for our health as well without the use of drugs. So stress is not all that bad, but often the nature of the stress and how we think about it. But general things that you should do, we should all do, and I try to practice myself as much as I can be summarized what a good parent would do for their children. So the same advice, go out and play. So have a regular physical activity or exercise routine because our bodies were made to move. Don't skip meals. So schedule regular healthy meals. Sometimes when we're stressed, we eat the things that are not so good for us. Or when we're pressed for time, we might want to just go through the drive-through and have McDonald's or Burger King. But no matter how stressed we are, it's important to spend a bit of time and plan your meals and eat foods that are healthier fats like omega-3s, 6s, and fish and olive oil, avocados, the healthier fats, healthy nutrition varieties of vegetables and fruits, and a good source of protein. And a good parent will tell you to go to bed. Make sure you get enough sleep and take regular breaks throughout your day whenever you can. And when we talk about mindfulness, I'll talk about certain ways that I use breaks during the daytime just to maintain my physical and mental balance. And of course, go to the doctor, see your own family doctor if you have one, when you think there might be something wrong, when you need some help. And that goes for physical as well as emotional well-being. In fact, a large amount of my time is spent guiding patients going through really stressful times, not just physical things, because emotional well-being affects our physical well-being as well. And it's really important to express our emotions in a positive way, to share with our people that are close to us, people that we trust, a small group of confidants, our best friends or our loved ones. So even I have my own support group. So I have a couple of colleagues. One's a family doctor that started practice in Burnaby same time I did, went to the same medical school, UBC. And there's also a general surgeon that's part of our group of three. We would meet at Tim Hortons and talk about family, work stress, our colleagues. Everything is confidential. And we kind of were a listening board and gave gentle advice and guidance and support for each other. And of course, anything that we say at Tim's stays at Tim's. But we all need kind of an outlet so we're not feeling so alone and getting that different perspective that can tell us if our worldview or story that we're telling ourselves might be seen in a different way. So it's always helpful, not as a criticism, but helpful advice and seeing things in a different way. Because as you can see, it's easy if we're just with ourselves, with our own thoughts, that we just repeat the same thoughts, and it can lead us to a very negative perspective. And Gandhi gave this eternal advice that a key to happiness is to live in accord with your values, with our work and in our relationships. Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. It makes life much easier. And at the end of our lives, and every day, the most important thing is to attend to our relationships, especially our family and close friends and the people we work with every day. Those relationships are so important. And at the end of life, that's really the important thing, not how many hours that we worked or how much money we made or things that we bought, because at the end of life, we don't take any of that with us. But our legacy is the love that we shared and how we expressed love and received it from the important people in our lives. And the most important thing about those relationships, we often leave it to default and let work and other priorities and crises take precedence. But for every one of our relationships to thrive, we have to attend to them, our attention as well as our time. And again, every life story is really a love story, just like my mom's life. And how I came to terms with that tremendous loss is that that love that she gave is still alive, as still a part of me, and something that I give forward, not only to my own family, to my friends, but to my patients and to my community. And I know positive things and love and words of encouragement that I can share with all of you, that you can share those with the people you care about as well. So we're all part of this endless life story and love story. So the second emotional skill that we need is mindfulness. But it's quite misunderstood by a lot of people. Most people have heard about mindfulness, um, but I use it to center my mind, to increase my awareness of what's going on, because as you know, our thoughts can be like a tunnel vision and we can get stuck in a certain way of seeing things. But when we take a break and kind of reflect on our lives and connect with our senses and the here and now, it calms the nervous system and it engages that right cerebral hemisphere to combat all those endless thoughts of our left cerebral hemisphere and its limited story of how our life is and where it's going. And that right side of the brain through mindfulness can help us modulate how we experience these challenging situations, our emotions, our thoughts, and our physical sensations, including pain. And when we learn mindfulness, we learn to be less reactive, just reacting to things with anger, with sadness, with anxiety. And we become a little bit more accepting and experience every aspect of our lives. So everything we have to learn to accept. We have to accept reality as it is. Our choice is to not accept it and react to it and get really upset about things we can't change, or to recognize the things that we can change. And one of the things we can change is our perspective and how we relate to the situation and other people. So it's a bit more than just relaxed breathing or focusing on the senses. It was kind of brought to the West through John Kabat-Zinn at Harvard Medical School, where he used mindfulness meditation, attention to the senses and the breath to relieve pain and stress, depression and anxiety. So it's an evidence-based form of therapy for all of us and an important emotional health skill for all of us too. And really, in a nutshell, it's awareness of everything that arises through paying close attention, deliberately on purpose, in the present moment, and without judgment. That's the tough one, without judging. So seeing things as they are without necessarily having to label them or to react to them. So some people think it's just being present in the moment. And when we do that, when we do some mindfulness practice, which will do in a moment, you will feel more calm and relaxed. But it doesn't always translate in how you respond in the rest of your life and to your thoughts as they come up. So we'll talk about how to integrate that different mindful perspective using the right side of the brain. So I have a different way of teaching mindfulness to my own patients. So a natural outcome of mindfulness, if you just meditate, sitting on a cushion on retreats for weeks on end, you develop your sense of concentration and focus. You can expand your awareness, and then you eventually recognize that everything in life is always changing. Sounds will transform and change. Your breath is different with every breath. What you sense changes from moment to moment. Even sensations of pain, hot and cold and tingling come and go, and our thoughts come and go. And to be mindful is to recognize that all things are impermanent. So that's the big insight from mindfulness practice. And that we can start experiencing things without identifying them, like saying that this feeling is who I am, that I am the pain, I am my anger, or I'm my sadness or anxiety. So we start being less reactive and less resistive of things just as they are. So it means not getting carried away with our emotions, sensations, or getting lost in thought. And we recognize that a lot of our suffering comes from how we react to things. In mindfulness, we call it aversion, our anger, fear, hatred, our pushing away of things, or craving, our desire for things, our thirst and our clinging and wanting things to stay with us or to hold on to them or to possess them. So mindfulness creates a state where we're recognizing things, appreciating things as they are without those pushing away or clinging. One of the goals of mindfulness is this peace or equanimity, kind of emptying ourselves of the little egos that are constructed by our limited life stories created by that left side of the brain. And we learn to accept things unconditionally. And a key quality that also arises is compassion, knowing that our suffering and the suffering of others can come from our our limited way of seeing ourselves and other people and all things in our life. And we nurture this unconditional love that they call metta in mindfulness. And it's similar to agape, Greek for that brotherly or unconditional love. And we are much happier when we can accept others and ourselves with compassion and without judgment. But of course, it doesn't always come naturally. So I'll give some little tips that I share with patients and I use myself to kind of establish a mindfulness habit, keeping that right side of the brain online when we're dealing with things with the left side of the brain in day-to-day activity and our relationships. It's really important to keep us on course. It's like an airplane that has um, autopilot to self-correct so that we stay on course. Because if you go in the wrong direction at the start or somewhere during your journey, you'll end up miles away from your destination. So we always need to kind of check the roadmap and check the autopilot to make sure we're staying on course. So the first step is daily mindfulness practice, and it could be 5, 10, 20 minutes, some people for hours. My Auntie Therese was quite a devout um, Buddhist who did daily mindfulness practice, and she would do it for hours and hours and hours and feel really at peace. So, with your permission, I'd like to guide you through a much shorter mindfulness practice, under 5 minutes. So, I invite you to close your eyes, make yourself comfortable, knowing that you can move around and shift at any time you need to, just for your own comfort. And I'd like you first to focus your attention on your breath and notice the sensations that you feel with each in breath, with each breath in. And you may feel it in your nose or mouth or throat. You may feel it in the muscles of your chest or your belly as you take each breath in. Not trying to control the breath, to breathe fast or slow, but just each breath as it naturally comes. Focusing on the sensations of breathing in. And then noticing the sensations wherever you may feel it in your body as you breathe out. And if our minds naturally wander by sounds or thoughts, we can gently bring our attention back to the sensations of your breath. Breathing in and breathing out. So that the sensations of the breath in and out is the anchor for your attention and concentration. Now I invite you to turn your attention to the window of your ears to notice sounds in your environment wherever you are. It could be sounds in the distance, maybe the sound of wind or cars driving by or music in the background. Just attend to any sounds that arise, not needing to ruminate or think about them much, but just notice how sounds come and go. And like we did with the breath, if stray thoughts or feelings pop up, gently turn your attention back to the sound as they naturally come, change, and fade away. Now I invite you to turn your attention to sensations in the body. And it could be warmth or coolness in any part of the body. You might turn your attention to feelings in your hands or your fingers. You might feel a sensation of energy or tingling in a pleasant way. And notice those feelings, how they change. And then if part of your body is feeling uncomfortable, you could attend to that, or you can attend to another part of your body that feels really relaxed and comfortable. Okay. Now I gently invite you to return your attention to the here and now, to our presentation, and you can open your eyes. So that's just a brief taste of mindfulness, and that was just under 4 minutes. But you can imagine how calming that can be to do that in a daily practice, maybe just starting with 5 or 10 minutes, attending to the sensations of the breath, using that as the anchor of your attention, just recognizing the feelings of your breath. And if distracting thoughts or feelings arise or sensations, you can return your attention to the breath. And then when you choose to, you can attend to sound or sensation. So most people find that has a very calming effect on their mind. And it really is helpful. So doing this for 10, 20 minutes a day for practice does have really beneficial effects on stress. But there's ways of kind of integrating that into your everyday life. So this is just one of a number of practices that I recommend and practice every day. So during the day at work or at school or in your daily activities, we need to take breaks. Otherwise, we can get caught up in our thinking left side of the brain, always problem solving and creating our stories, or we get lost in that default mode of daydreaming about our life situation. So when you naturally have your breaks, like your mid breakfast, mid morning breaks, lunch break, or when you go to the washroom, those are little opportunities for just a minute or less. You can microdose these moments of mindfulness. So if you Google microdosing mindfulness, don't stop at microdosing because that's microdosing drugs. But microdosing mindfulness was out of the University of California, Berkeley, where they found that doing these little mental activities of focus has the same beneficial effects as meditating, doing that mindfulness practice we first did for 30 or 60 minutes a day. So take a moment when you go to the washroom, besides looking after your regular business, or when you're having your coffee breaks or lunch breaks or dinner breaks. And you can do some of these exercises, and you'll see more on that microdosing mindfulness website. So one is you can look out the window and just watch uh, the movement of the effect of the wind on a tree or plants outside, the movement of cars or people outside, the movements of animals like dogs, cats, and just watch without labeling and just notice and follow the movement. Or you can just sit down and just ponder on where you are, that you're one human being and among many, many, many living beings. And you're on this planet Earth that's circling the sun in our own solar system, but part of a bigger galaxy with countless stars around you. And you're connected to all of it. Or you can make eye contact with another person. Or I often do with our own Labradoodle. Look Teddy in the eye and we really connect at the same time. Or you can look at different objects in your home. There's one of my favorite mugs from one of my best friends. So I would look at it and feel the texture and look at the play of light on it. You could do that with any object in your immediate environment. Just really notice things that you may not have noticed before: the touch, the feel, the textures, the colors, the warmth or coolness. And as I mentioned, connecting with pets. So one of my favorite mindfulness activities is taking Teddy for a walk or just giving him a nice pet. Another useful practice are dedicated meditations reflecting on peace, joy, compassion, and love. So this kind of reminds me of Advent. So my late mother-in-law, Hyacinth, was a very devout Catholic, and every Advent Sundays, this is the 4 Sundays leading to Christmas, we'd have these huge family dinners, and we would have a little session where we focus on the 4 themes of Advent. It's actually hope, peace, love, and joy. Um, Similar to these 4 divine abodes in mindfulness meditation. So we'd focus on each of those leading up to the holiday celebrations. But these 4 divine abodes, or 4 deep spiritual mindsets, can really inform how we see the rest of our days and how we're handling the stress in our lives too. And each of them are really useful at different points. So the traditional way that they teach it in mindfulness is to repeat particular words that kind of evoke these feelings of acceptance of all things as they are and a deep sense of peace. I'll introduce you to some of these, but towards the end, I'll show you another way of really connecting with these divine mindsets that really can inform how we assess our thoughts, feelings, and situations. So the tradition is to kind of recite these things in our mind until they bring about a sense of peace. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I calm my mind. May I be balanced and may I be at peace. May I learn to see the arising and passing of all things with equanimity and balance. And may I be open and balanced and peaceful. So the tradition is to kind of repeat these things to ourselves until we feel that sense of peace and calm. And a traditional meditation for joy is: may you be joyful, may your happiness increase, may you not be separated by great happiness, may your good fortune and causes of your joy and happiness increase. And for compassion, just think: may you be held in compassion, may your pain and sorrow be eased, may you be at peace. And then the loving kindness or metta meditation to foster unconditional love. So to imagine someone in front of you, we usually start with someone that we love unconditionally, like my daughter, Sarah, and just wish to her, may you be happy and healthy, peaceful and safe. And then for greater practice over time, you can, because it's easy to feel that way, people you'd actually love, you might imagine some of your friends and see them in front of you and say those same things. May you be happy and healthy, peaceful and safe. And if you do this and imagine someone you don't know too well, but you see pretty regularly, you can improve your feelings of compassion and unconditional love towards them by visualizing them and repeating those same words. May you be happy and healthy, peaceful and safe. And the ultimate test is think about someone that you've had a disagreement with and see them in front of you. See them as they were as a child, as a baby. See them as they grew up with their hopes and dreams and their disappointments and their sad times. See them as adults and with both their joy and suffering, and wish to them, may you be happy and healthy, peaceful and safe. A fourth practice I find really helpful is to listen to daily podcasts. So these are all free. Examples are Tara Brach or Jack Kornfield or Joseph Goldstein. So they're my favorites. So I often listen to them when I'm driving to work, driving to the pool, or when I'm getting up, shaving, washing, brushing my teeth in the morning. Because some of them are guided meditations and some of them are actually just talking about these themes of unconditional love and forgiveness and compassion and sense of peace and how that integrates with our everyday life. So it really brings it back home that it's just not a esoteric practice that makes us feel calm at the moment and separates us from the real world, but it's something that enlightens and informs how we respond and react to other people and to our life situation. And you can read these same podcasts. They're also great books that are written by them as well. So you can read the works of Thich Nhat Hanh. It's very practical. Um, Rick Hanson, the psychologist, has written some really practical books on mindfulness and shows how all these practices really transform our brain and are scientifically based. And during the day, there are moments when we have these natural pauses, and those are opportunities for us to stop, take a breath in and out, and just reflect on what we see in front of us and what we're feeling at the moment. And there'll be those inevitable traffic lights and traffic jams when you're waiting at a bus stop, when you're in a lineup in the store, when you're on the elevator. So instead of pulling out your phone and checking email, use these pauses as an opportunity to just be present and to be aware of what you're feeling, doing, and saying. So these are all opportunities throughout the day just to reset. And I use situations and negative thoughts or strong emotions that seize our attention. These tend to make us fall into our default mode network where we're ruminating upon negative things, and that makes us feel more negative about other people or a situation. Or we can get caught up in the thoughts that are produced by the left side of the brain, reinforcing the same thoughts. Or we can use them as meditation bells. So feelings of sadness, anxiety, anger, or situation, use these as meditation bells, as a reminder to pause and think. What am I thinking, doing, and feeling? And one way of reflecting about what our situation is this RAIN acronym. So recognize what I'm feeling, thinking, and experiencing, accept without judgment, clinging or pushing away. Investigate, meaning observe, note, and maybe if it's a difficult thought, choose an alternative way of thinking about things. One way to do that is to ask yourself, what would my best friend who cares about me tell me if I was thinking this way? And what would they tell me in this situation? Like my Tim Hortons group. And then finally, the N is for nurture and non-identify. So with compassion, let it all go. Recognize that although the thoughts are produced by your brain, you are not your thoughts. And although you might be feeling a feeling, that feeling is transient and you are not that feeling. It's just something you're experiencing at the moment. You can think of your whole consciousness as the big blue sky. And you can think of some of our thoughts that we get caught up in and lost in as the clouds. They're really constantly changing and ephemeral, but our whole existence and being is this big blue sky. And these rainy Vancouver days, we sometimes forget, unless we're actually going in an airplane somewhere, that above those dark clouds is a big blue sky that's always been there. So your whole mind, your whole awareness is the big blue sky, and thoughts and feelings are just these transient clouds, temporary weather. That gives us a bit of distance from being caught up in our thoughts and feelings. And I use mindfulness to frame each day with intention. What do I want to achieve, and what attitude do I want to bring to my practice and my relationships and interactions with others? I start off with gratitude, appreciating all the things I have before I even get out of bed, and reaffirm the values that I want, how I want to express love and to listen and to be compassionate and to realize what my mission is in life and my mission for the day is. And the goal of mindfulness is to awaken from this trance of what we call conventional consciousness, the conceptual left-sided brain way of perceiving experience. The traditional left side of the brain sees ourselves as this really limited being that has to look after his or her own interests, that narrows down what our potential is and really narrows down on what we want to achieve, which is usually material, physical things or gratification. And it creates us versus them, and people that we ought to feel connected to, we see them as other, and our relationships become competitions and compromises. But the goal of mindfulness is to awaken from that really narrowed worldview and recognize our deeper connection to one another and our shared humanity. And with compassion, knowing that we each have a limited way of seeing the world, but that together by listening and with compassion, we can together expand how we relate and how we see ourselves. And mindfulness, there's a book called What Happens in Mindfulness, written by John Teasdale. And he talked about this other book called The Master and the Emissary. So originally, the master is actually the right side of the brain, which tells you who you really are, that you are more than you think you are, that you are connected to all living beings with this earth and with all the people in your life, and that you have a purpose in life that is far beyond your immediate needs and goals of that individual smaller self. And the left side of the brain helps us achieve goals from day to day and helps that human body to survive. But the Western world really forces us to emphasize that left side of the brain, that judging, comparing, conceptual way of thinking of things. And mindfulness kind of awakens us to that broader way of looking at the world that's more holistic, as opposed to the conceptual, smaller way of seeing things with the left side of our brain. So our conceptual way of knowing things from the left side of the brain that creates a lot of our limited thoughts is the world of ideas, again, associated with the left way of thinking, judging and comparing. And it really creates through that default mode network, our story-making mind, a very limited worldview and very limited view of yourself, the smaller self. Whereas the right side of the brain is the part that makes us feel connected. And it has helped humans to survive as societies, as a community, by recognizing what we share in common, that we're part of a greater whole. And this is what we nurture through the mindful attitudes and those particular divine mindsets of equanimity or peace, acceptance, joy, and true happiness that goes beyond our individual selves. That unconditional love, loving ourselves and loving others and all beings just as they are without judgment, in spite of our imperfections. And compassion, caring for the suffering and wanting relief of the suffering for others, and wanting instead relief of suffering and happiness and love. Joe Bolt Taylor was a neuroscientist that had a stroke that actually took offline her left brain. And she wrote about it in A Stroke of Insight. And she wrote more about it in Whole Brain Living from a few years ago. How during that time when she had the stroke, how she felt so blissful and connected and saw her whole life in a different way. And she was free of all those anxieties that the left brain preoccupies us with. And we do need both sides of the brain to survive and thrive in the world. As I mentioned, the left hemisphere comes from that perspective of the individual separate self, and it really functions to keep your body safe from danger. But the right hemisphere sees your world from the perspective of your whole and your connection with all life and all human beings. So mindfulness on a deeper level, if you do these practices, then you can foster those mindsets that will improve your relationships and help be more compassionate with yourself and other people. And then the third mind skill is cognitive therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's really managing our thoughts. You don't have to see a therapist for it, but there's some resources how you can get some guidance in learning the skills of cognitive therapy. Because as we mentioned, our thoughts can shape our emotions and our emotions can shape our thoughts. So these are common cognitive biases or thinking errors that every one of us falls into. So one is mind reading, believing you really know what the other person is thinking. So um, even though I've been married to my wife since 1989, like pretty well most of our lives, I cannot read her mind, but sometimes I assume I know what she's thinking. So in the earlier part of our marriage, I remember my favorite shirt was missing. And the first thing I thought was, well, she's just trying to control my life. I knew she wanted me to throw that shirt out. She probably took the initiative and threw that shirt out. And I just made that assumption of, I know she just did that deliberately to control me or to hurt me. But then I realized that she wanted me to look my best and I shouldn't be wearing this ratty old shirt that was worn out, stained, and had holes in it. So she was thinking what was best for me. But we sometimes can fall into a trap of reading the intention of the other person without really thinking about it. For example, friend hasn't returned your text or call. You assume you know why she hasn't called you. Or someone did something and you felt hurt about it. And then you assume that that person deliberately did that to hurt you. So to counter that fallacy of mind reading, we have to realize that we really don't know what another person is thinking. You could check things out. Um, I should give others the benefit of the doubt, and maybe I should actually just talk to them and see what was going on. Another bias or trap we fall into is overgeneralizing, making broad assumptions based on the facts that we see. And we know that what we see is very limited. So you had a bad experience with a coworker or someone you trusted, and then you make the assumption you can't trust anyone. So you start doubting or not trusting anyone. Or you have a bad experience with people from a certain group, and then you make the assumption that they're all the same. And we can counter that by looking for exceptions and realizing that one rotten banana doesn't make the whole bunch bad, and that other people are individuals just like me. They go through those same experiences, they all have their own source of suffering and their own sad stories. The thinking error polarizing could be called all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking, or good and bad thinking. Like the pandemic is a disaster. There's nothing good in this situation. Well, there was a lot of bad, but We can look at exceptions and recognize that for most of us, your situation's not so bad, that you had support throughout the pandemic, and that the challenge of the pandemic has brought out a lot of kindness from so many people too. Personalizing is cognitive bias where we take things too personally, thinking that that person did that deliberately to hurt you, or that the whole life is bad and is conspiring against you. Or we can look at other points of view. Maybe that person's having a bad day and maybe I could just let that go. Catastrophizing is common when we're feeling more anxious and helpless. And we believe that the absolute worst things are going to happen. Like preparing for an exam, you think you're going to fail, I'll never be a success. We're really thinking that this is the end of the world, or that I'm going to get sick and die. So we can counter that by preparing for the worst, but knowing that it's not likely to happen. And know that now that all we've been through with the pandemic, that we know how to stay well, and we're going to teach it to Santa Claus. And if we get sick, we know we can reach out to our doctors if we need to. Another common error, similar to the negativity biases, we disqualify the positive, downplaying the positive aspects of your situation and your resources, and minimizing the good that you've done. So if you're doing well, you might say, I was just lucky that time, or just looking at your whole situation, not seeing any of the good. You know, we can counter this by recognize the positive, to know that you're always learning and getting better, and recognize the positive things. Like with the pandemic, our families and our communities really came together and everyone helped each other. So a useful acronym for evaluating some of those thoughts that we're ruminating upon is to ask first, is it true? Is this thought helpful for me in my situation? Is it inspiring me to positive action? And is it necessary? And is the thought meeting my needs? And finally, kind. Is this thought kind? So this applies to what we say as well, what we say to other people, what we're going to text, or send in an email. So we should all run these things through this THINK acronym. Is what I'm about to say to myself or other people or express to others, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And if it doesn't meet all these criteria, then we should come up with an alternative thought, or send a different message, or not send the message at all. So we all ought to reflect on the thoughts that trigger our emotions, be that anger or sadness or anxiety or stress, and ask yourselves, is there another way of looking at the situation? What would my best friend who cares about me, what would he or she say um, about these thoughts, and what thoughts would they offer in their stead that would serve us better? So being your own best friend to yourself. So these are some books that I recommend to patients on learning these aspects of cognitive therapy. So there's Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy by David Burns, a classic. Mind Over Mood, which is a workbook by Podesky and Greenberger. Authentic Happiness by Martin Seligman. And Hardwiring Happiness by the psychologist Rick Hanson. There's a free program called Bounce Back that you can register for or be referred to by your family doctor. And there is a CBT course that is free with referral by a family doctor. So it's Mind Space Skills for Wellbeing. Sorry, the typo, I just did this last night because they updated. It used to be CBT Skills Group, but now it's under the umbrella of Mind Space Skills for Wellbeing. And it's usually about 6 weekly online sessions that are at least an hour or 2 hours each, that are very practical with exercises, and they follow this CBT Skills Group workbook. So the sessions are free. There's a deposit of $65 that you get refunded if you complete the 6 or 7 classes for each module. It requires a referral by a family physician because we do the screening to make sure that if someone's suffering from depression, that it's not one that requires us to guide them with professional counseling or a psychologist or psychiatrist. So you do need that pre-screening. But for most of us, we could take this course through referrals to your family doctor. And it's really useful because they work through the workbook, which is a great resource that you get to kind of keep a PDF version on your computer. I think they do have hardcover versions available too. I think that might be an additional cost, but it's really worthwhile. So as family physicians, we actually got to go through this whole program, and it was really useful for a lot of my colleagues that were not actually practicing mindfulness or cognitive therapy. So it's really helpful, and it's helpful for me to send a lot of my patients to take the course. And the fourth skill is visualizing your goals. And I'll teach you a little bit about self-hypnosis. And it's just nothing mysterious, and it won't turn you into a zombie, but I'll kind of explode some of the myths that people have about hypnosis and self-hypnosis. But first off, we have to visualize what our goals are, visualizing what are positive goals. Because when we're depressed, we're focused on these negative feelings. When we're anxious, we're focusing on what we're worried about. And when we're angry, we're focusing on the object of our anger and how we've been mistreated. And all of you are familiar with the thesaurus from elementary school. So Roget's thesaurus is a classic book that gives us words that mean this similar synonyms, but words that mean the opposite antonyms. So Roget actually started the thesaurus because he was feeling really depressed and lonely because a lot of his good friends were lost through death or through moving, through distance. And he wanted to feel better. So he came up with words that meant the opposite of loneliness or sadness or grief. And that was a number of words like joy and connection and fulfillment and happiness. So he used that to feel better. And often we get focused on the negative emotions that we just want to be away. But our goal is not to be free of anxiety or a sad mood or depression or anger. It's the opposite, to be at peace, to be calm, to be confident, to be feeling joy, feeling connection, to feeling our higher purpose again. So we ought to visualize what those higher goals are, and you can turn to those mindsets of the holistic thinking, connected brain, the right cerebral hemisphere, peace, love, joy, and compassion. We have to turn our problems into goals, because once we have goals, then we can set little steps that I've outlined that we can use to move towards those goals and transform our life situation and transform how we're feeling and experiencing and transform our relationships. So instead of replaying the past, ruminating in the negative, think about what you really, really deeply want, what your higher self wants. And hypnosis has really been confused and mythologized in public media, but it's a natural state we naturally fall into. So its features are focused attention, similar to mindfulness and meditation, tuning out the immediate environment, and tuning more deeply with particular states that are desirable for you, particular feelings, sensations, or ideas. So it's that focus, tuning out some aspects of the environment, and tuning into your goals, the goal states. And we naturally fall into this hypnotic state when we're daydreaming. So it's usually by default, and hence the default mode at work, where we're not paying much attention, when we're kind of bored or ruminating, we come up with these very limiting life stories that end up making us feel worse and narrow our sense of self. We often, through past trauma, we become deeply focused, and then we learn things that are not adaptive for us in the future. So people that have suffered a lot of abuse and trauma in the past may lose their trust in relationships and their trust in themselves and their own sense of empowerment and agency. When you're in a medical emergency in the hospital, We kind of lose our sense of our regular self and we're really focused on the situation. What doctors, nurses, and others say to us at that time has a big impact how we feel about our health and our sense of agency and control again. The last time you watched a movie in the theater, you may have been really engrossed in the characters and the actions and the environment and forgetting your everyday life, and then surprised to come out of it at the end and it's daylight and all those characters were actually imaginary and not real, and those are just actors, not real people in those situations. And when you're lost in thought or reading a novel, those are all experiences where you're deeply focused and deeply impressionable. And so in those cases, we can pick up negative thoughts, beliefs that we carry on into our everyday function with other people. So we're already in a trance, like a hypnotic trance, and it's that daydreaming mode that we fall into. And it really affects how we see our situation and ourselves and other people. So, but you can create a trance, a new mental model or mindset or a personal narrative, and escape this trap that we put ourselves into. So think about the beliefs that you have, these unquestioned assumptions and core beliefs. They're part of the limiting stories that are created by the judging mind in the natural trance. So what are your core beliefs about yourself? Are they limiting you? Is your narrative uh, more fostered by the loving right side of the brain or the limiting left side of the brain? Do your core beliefs foster positive feelings like love, connection, and peace? And they foster positive actions like creativity, kindness, and generosity. So here's common limiting beliefs that we often adopt in childhood, like I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve to be happy or successful or loved, or that I'm powerless, or that I have to be perfect or achieve a lot to be loved, or that I can't trust anyone or life is unfair. So in this natural state of hypnosis, you can choose to focus on what you want to focus on. You can dissociate from just the immediate stimuli of the present moment and create new associations and connections. So again, that natural state that we fall into. So therapeutic hypnosis or self-hypnosis is awakening from that limited trance we naturally fall into. And we can create ever more inclusive mental models or narratives of how our world works and who we are, and expand our sense of self and our connection with the rest of the world. So it's not something someone does to you, it's something a skill that you can use in a positive way. So you can allow the critical mind of the left brain to relax and use imagery and intuition to foster a relaxed state and to reinforce positive beliefs about yourself. So we're running out of time, but we have enough time for me to show you how we can really foster these feelings of joy, peace, and love. And how you can bring that online to shift your perspective during the holiday season and the rest of your life in the new year. So I'd like you to uh, relax, get in a comfortable position, close your eyes. This is a very brief, guided visualization exercise where in your imagination, bring to mind scenes from your memory where you felt a selfless, timeless sense of joy. And these are moments when you felt in flow, where your abilities match the challenge at hand, or it could be when you were in nature and you felt connected with nature, the sights and sounds and smells. Or it could be when you're at play with young children or sharing laughter with old friends, or you were in a place where you had a deep sense of awe and special moments in nature. So bring yourself to some scene from your memory. And it could be in nature, it could be with other people, where you felt this deep sense of joy. Notice the senses, the smells, the sights and sounds around you. And you know that joy is a happiness that is beyond that smaller self. and you felt just timeless happiness and enjoyment, feeling connected with other people and connected with your deeper sense of self. And when you can feel that joy, bring together your index and thumb together, and that sensation will reconnect you with a sense of joy and happiness. So that at any time during the day when you're feeling kind of blue or stressed, you may bring your thumb and index finger together and recall this deep sense of joy that's always a part of you. And the more you practice visualizing these scenes of joy in your life, the more you can connect with that joy that's always a part of your deeper mind. And to foster a sense of peace or equanimity, I invite you to imagine yourself in your own personal sanctuary. Hear the sounds that bring you peace. It could be the sounds of nature or running water, sounds of water on a beach, leaves in the rustling wind, or water trickling over rocks, or maybe serene music like Bach or Pachelbel. So what sounds do you hear in your mind in your sanctuary of peace? And what feelings do you feel? Sensations that soothe your body, warmth or coolness, relaxation. Allow yourself to inhale and notice the scents that calm your mind. And perhaps feel yourself in the presence of a person or being, real or imagined, who evokes a sense of deep peace. And when you feel that sense of peace, you can bring your thumb and middle finger together so that at any time when you're feeling stressed during the day or rushed or feeling that you're judging yourself or others harshly, to bring your thumb and middle finger together. Take a deep breath in and reconnect with your sanctuary of peace. What you hear and feel, sense, and deep inside, that deep sense of peace that's always a part of you and can inform how you're feeling at any time of the day. And then finally, to foster unconditional love. Feel yourself in the presence of a person or being who accepts and loves you just as you are, and see yourself connected to that universal cycle of love, accepting all the love you've received from so many people in your life throughout your whole life, and sending that love out to all whom you know and to all living beings. Just feel all that love you've received and the love that you give out to others and to yourself. Shine that upon all the people in your lives, all living beings, and upon yourself too. And when you're feeling that love course through you, that unlimited source of unconditional love, bring your thumb and ring finger together so that when you are feeling sad or alone or angry or distance from others, you can bring that thumb and index and ring finger together and reconnect with that deep sense of love that you've received and that's in you to give to others and yourself. And I invite you to bring yourself to normal attention again, open your eyes, and recognize that we're always progressively awakening to or evolving mental models and stories. And as I mentioned, like scientists, we're always constantly testing and revising our theories of who we are and how the world works. And we're awakening further and further and expanding our views and accepting more, accepting others more, accepting ourselves more. And we're together, we're writing a very more expansive and inclusive life story, evolving into our positive potential. So there's always a positive potential, and it's to be experienced in every day. What we must see, feel, and act to achieve that potential together. So I really believe that each of us has a unique potential in life that's bigger than ourselves, and it's our calling to realize that potential and to help others achieve theirs, because we can all be agents of positive change. with our own minds, in our lives, in our community, and in our world. So don't forget these superpowers: the ability to recognize your own thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, and to transform them. So briefly, it'll be in the slides, but if you need help, there's a number of organizations. There's Burnaby Mental Health. You can self-refer, get referred to a physician. There's Canadian Mental Health Association, which are online resources and support. And for families and children, there's Camry Child and Family Services on Imperial Street in Metrotown. Online resources include Anxiety Canada, with online courses of cognitive therapy included, and the Mood Disorders Association of BC, and Safer for those who have suicidal thoughts or have attempted, and for family members who have loved ones that have been through this. So I'd like to leave you with 4 mindsets to guide us through the holiday season: peace, unconditional love, compassion, and joy. The 4 divine abodes, very similar to the 4 themes of Advent, and they are mindsets for all the great religions. So peace. We have to accept all that is, rather than hoping that reality can be any different than it is. We just have to accept our Christmas gifts and the gifts of the present just as they are, including other people. And we have to be grateful for what we have today, the measure of health that you have at this moment, and the people that are in your life today, because we won't always have them. And remember unconditional love, that everyone wants to be happy and everyone truly believes that they're right. We all live in according to our own conscious and unconscious life stories, and not one of us is perfect, but every one of us deserves and needs to feel love. And for compassion, realize that suffering is a part of every one of our lives, but there's always someone else who's in need of your help and compassion, others in need. And we should ask, what can we do today to make someone else's day? And we need to practice that self-compassion, because our judging left brain not only judges everything around us, but it can be very hard on ourselves. And finally, joy. So I hope you will feel joy this season, because the only time that we can be fully alive and happy and connected with others is in the present moment, and all the things you're going to be doing with loved ones and friends and people you encounter, even strangers, in the next couple of weeks. Enjoy what you can experience with the people in your life today, because you don't always get a second chance. And it's our expanded connected selves that can lift us up from the limitations of our small self-told stories. Okay, I'm going to stop my share because I went over time. So thank
Hello.
you for,
That was so helpful, Dr. Wong. I'm spending time with some family and friends, and those tips are they're good skills to actually consider when you're close quarters, you're hanging out, you're having a good time, but perhaps it's not always roses and sunshine. So having this amazing information is really valuable, I think, for all of us.
yeah, I'm sure some of our meditation bells will be chimed in our interactions with friends and family. And you can always take a mindfulness break in the washroom.
Yes. Yes, very important. Go for a walk. I think that's going to be my key, is to go for a little walk. Let let nature's power sort of help out. So, thank you so much. People have been very quiet in the chat. I shared our resources, and oh, we have a question. Um, Craig says, "Do you believe that compassion in general is a thief of joy? If so, anytime it can be useful?"
I think compassion, like we should have these 4 divine mindsets online all the time. But our brains get hijacked by situations and the thinking of the left side of the brain and other people operating on the left side, which is the majority. So
Sorry.
we can always use more compassion. But most of us need more self-compassion, and know that
Right.
every one of you deserves to be happy and to feel fulfilled, and not to beat ourselves up for the negative things that we see in ourselves, because there's a lot more positive than negative in each of us.
Great. And my apologies that the word was, do you believe that comparison in general is a thief of joy? So that's a very different question.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, when we compare ourselves, uh, because we can have joy in other people's successes. If we think, if we envy other people, we don't know their story. Sometimes the people that seem to be more successful, we can see people that have been really successful in politics, the other side of the border, like Elon Musk and Donald Trump, but I wouldn't envy anything that either of them have.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter how much money or power you have or recognition or your station in life. And obviously those two individuals don't appear to be that happy. And it's insatiable. Yeah.
Yeah,
But to be satisfied and to know that if we can support other people to be happier and to feel loved, then that is the most worthwhile. Like what Emily Dickinson said, if you can just help one being, one life become happier, then that's a life worth living.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Very nice comment from Roll there for you, Dr. Wong, to take a peek. If anyone doesn't, if you don't have any more questions, I will just remind you that our next session in January is on January 16th. So post the holidays, and if you're feeling at that time that you're looking for to make some habit changes, the topic is the keys to positive change, turning our bad habits into positive ones. So I'm going to pop the registration link into the chat right now. You can register that for that right now. There you go. It's in there. And I will just comment that there's that 8-question evaluation as soon as we stop the session. Please, if you have a moment to take the time to fill it out. The last question is for those of you, if you're new to this, to these talks and you'd like to hear about more, I send out email reminders to folks. So if you want me to include you on my email list, just put your email address in for that last question. If you're already on the list, no need to put your email there because I gotcha. I think we did it.
Great. Well, thanks for sticking with me and your valuable time with us as well. And I wish every one of you a really joyful, peaceful, compassionate, and loving holiday season with all the people that matter to you. And to know that every one of you matters as well.
Thank you. And to you as well, Dr. Wong, to you and your family. Hopefully you get some quiet, some rest time.
I will. Thank you, Leona.
All right. Well, you enjoy the rest of your evening and have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you in 2025.
Okay, see you next year.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.